Commander Zefkari had conquered 17 worlds before breakfast on most standard rotations. Today, however, he found himself staring at a human female who had just responded to his formal declaration of warfare by rolling up her sleeve and pointing at what appeared to be a small blue-green sphere embedded in her flesh. The silence on the bridge of the Dominion's razor stretched long enough for 3 different species to question their life choices. "Station Administrator," Zefkari tried again, his 4 arms adjusting his ceremonial blade with considerably less confidence than before. "I have issued a challenge of conquest. Your response is unclear." The human, her comm tag read Inc. 7 Actual, took a sip from a steaming container and shrugged. "Earth," she said, tapping the marking again. "That's my response." Behind Zefkari, Navigation Officer Vex Hui made a sound like wind through broken glass. "Commander," the insectoid whispered, "she's marked herself with her homeworld. That's either incredibly stupid or incredibly terrifying." "Stupid," muttered weapons specialist Grath, whose species had evolved from something that looked like an angry boulder. "Has to be stupid. Humans are new, primitive. Their homeworld isn't even Category 5 for strategic resources." Ink drained her container and set it down with a ceramic clink that somehow managed to sound ominous in the current context. "Look, Commander, Zeph something, right? I've got a quota to meet and 3 broken atmospheric processors that need attention before the next supply run. Are we doing this dance or not?" "Dance?" Zefkari's translator struggled with the idiom. His people had no concept of ritualized movement for pleasure, which made the translation subroutines suggest either mating display or pre-combat ceremony. Neither option improved his growing unease. "She's calling us out," hissed Communications Officer Threll, whose elongated skull pulsed with bioluminescent anxiety patterns. "Look at her posture, completely relaxed. Either she's completely insane or what?" Zefkari demanded. "Or she knows something we don't." On the main screen, Ink had turned away from the communication console and was now speaking to someone off-camera. Her voice carried clearly. "Hey, Marcus, bring me the impact wrench from Bay 3, the big one. These guys are taking forever to make up their minds." "The big one?" came a male voice from somewhere in the mining station. "You sure? That thing weighs 40 kilos. "Yeah, I'm sure. And grab my toolkit while you're at it." Zefkari watched as a massive piece of industrial equipment was handed to the human female, who accepted it with the same casual ease most species reserved for eating utensils. She hefted the wrench experimentally, nodded once, and turned back to the screen. "Sorry about that. Where were we?" "You were..." Zefkari found his voice catching in his throat. "You were responding to our challenge. Right, challenge." Ink tested the weight of the impact wrench again. "And I showed you this." She pointed once more to the small sphere on her arm. "Earth. That's where I'm from. That's what made me. That should be enough of a response for anyone with half a brain and access to a decent intelligence network." The bridge crew exchanged glances. Grath's rocky hide had shifted to a distinctly paler shade of granite. Vex Hui's compound eyes were dilating in what their species called pre-molt terror. Even Threll's bioluminescent patches had dimmed to barely visible flickers. "Commander," Vex Hui whispered, "request permission to access Dominion intelligence databases. I want to know what we're dealing with." "Granted," Zefkari replied, never taking his eyes off the human. "Priority search. Everything we have on Earth." Meanwhile, Ink had begun doing something with the impact wrench that looked suspiciously like maintenance work on a nearby console. The tool's pneumatic whine echoed through the station's communication array, somehow managing to sound both industrious and threatening. "Earth," she repeated conversationally, pausing in her work to glance at the screen. Third rock from Sol, about 12,000 kilometers in diameter, give or take. Mostly harmless, according to most galactic databases. Population of roughly 8 billion, last I checked. 8 billion, Threll repeated faintly. Give or take. Ink returned to her work. We're not great at census data. People keep moving around, being born, dying, changing their identification documents to avoid creditors. You know how it is. Zefkari did not, in fact, know how it was. His species maintained perfect population records, updated in real time through biological implants. The concept of not knowing exactly how many individuals existed at any given moment was as foreign to him as breathing underwater. You speak of your homeworld casually, he observed. Well, yeah, it's where I keep most of my stuff. The impact wrench whined again. On Zefkari's tactical display, the mining station's defensive systems remained completely inactive. No shields, no weapons arrays charging, no distress signals. Either the humans were supremely confident or supremely stupid. Given that one of them had just casually mentioned a population of 8 billion while wielding industrial equipment like it weighed nothing, Zefkari was beginning to suspect it wasn't stupidity. Commander, Vexhui's voice cracked with static. You need to see this. Intelligence just transmitted preliminary data on Earth-marking rituals. They call it tattooing. Tattooing. They voluntarily pierce their skin with needles and inject foreign substances to create permanent markings. For various reasons. Some ceremonial, some personal, some... Vexhui paused. Some apparently just because they were intoxicated. On the screen, Ink had finished her maintenance work and was now examining the impact wrench with what looked like professional satisfaction. There we go. Bay 3 atmospheric processor should be running at full efficiency now. She glanced at the communication console. You guys still there? Because I've got 2 more units to service before lunch. The marking, Zefkari said carefully. The image of your homeworld. What does it signify? Ink blinked. Signify? It's Earth. Where I'm from. I got it done when I was 18 because I thought it looked cool. Cool, Threll repeated, translator struggling with another idiom. Yeah, cool, nice, aesthetically pleasing. I was young and stupid and had just gotten my first off-world work contract. Seemed like a good idea at the time. She paused. Still think it looks pretty good, actually. The artist did nice work with the cloud formations. Zefkari stared at the small blue-green sphere on the human's arm. Cloud formations. She was discussing artistic technique in permanent body modification, while holding a piece of industrial equipment that could probably cave in his skull. You marked yourself, he said slowly, with your home world, because you thought it looked nice. And because it reminds me where I come from. Ink's voice carried a note of something that might have been fondness. Earth's got problems, don't get me wrong. Pollution, wars, reality television. But it's home. It made me what I am. Figured that was worth remembering. She set down the impact wrench and fixed Zefkari with a look that was neither hostile nor friendly, just direct. So, Commander, you came here looking for conquest. I showed you what made me. Still think this is going to be as easy as you figured? The question hung in the recycled air of the bridge, like a challenge wrapped in casual conversation. Zefkari found himself looking at the human female, this Ink, and seeing not a primitive inhabitant of a backwater mining station, but something else entirely. Something that carried its homeworld under its skin and spoke of 8 billion others like her as if they were a minor census discrepancy. Something that was apparently just getting started with its day. 47 minutes later, the Intelligence Division of the Dominion Fleet had declared a Code Yellow research priority and requisitioned 3 separate xenoanthropology departments. Senior Analyst Kriksdal, whose species evolved from coral-based organisms and therefore thought in very slow, very thorough patterns, had been pulled from his analysis of trade route efficiency to tackle what Command was calling the Earth marking problem. This, Kriksdal announced to his assembled team via neural link, makes absolutely no sense whatsoever. The data streaming across his bioluminescent display tendrils painted a picture so bizarre that 2 junior analysts had already requested transfers to easier assignments, like mapping black hole event horizons or negotiating with the silence cults. Humans, continued Kriksdal, voluntarily undergo what can only be described as controlled tissue damage to embed permanent visual designs under their skin. The motivations range from spiritual significance to... He paused, checking his translation matrix, remembering a really good vacation. Field researcher Homtech, a gaseous entity who communicated through modulated electromagnetic fields, flickered with confusion. Define really good vacation. Near as I can determine, it refers to a temporary cessation of labor duties combined with recreational activities. Humans apparently consider some of these experiences worthy of permanent physical commemoration. That's... Homtech's field patterns shifted through several configurations before settling on bewildered amber. Actually kind of sweet? Sweet isn't the word I'd use, muttered junior analyst Bex, whose exoskeleton was currently cycling through stress colors like a kaleidoscope. Look at subsection 47 of the cultural data. They also mark themselves to indicate group affiliations, personal achievements, deceased relatives, fictional characters from entertainment media, and... She paused to double-check the translation. Inside jokes that seemed funnier when they were intoxicated. Back on the Dominion's Razor, Commander Zefkari was receiving updates that only deepened his unease. The mining station below continued its mundane operations, while his crew scrambled to understand what they were dealing with. "Sir," reported Vex Hui, "Intelligence has confirmed that the human's marking is indeed her homeworld, but they've also discovered something else. Cross-referencing her personnel file with standard Dominion threat assessments indicates she's been working off-world for 12 standard cycles. And she chose to permanently mark herself with Earth before leaving, as if she knew she'd need to remember it. On the main screen, they could see ink moving through the station's corridors, with what appeared to be complete confidence, despite being surrounded by alien technology and operating in an environment that would kill most of her species without life support. She'd collected 2 more crew members along the way, both human, both marked with various designs visible on their exposed skin. "Commander," came the voice of Intelligence Coordinator Vashati from the main fleet, "we need you to see what we've learned about human marking distribution patterns." A secondary display activated, showing a 3-dimensional map dotted with countless tiny lights. Every mark represents a documented human with visible body modifications. As you can see, the practice appears to be universal across their species, with no correlation to social status, occupation, geographic origin, or apparent intelligence levels. Zefkari studied the display. "They all do this." "Not all, but a significant percentage. Intelligence estimates somewhere between 30 and 70% of the adult population, depending on regional variations and cultural subgroups. For what purpose?" "That's where it gets interesting," Vashoti continued. "We've identified 17 distinct categories of motivation, ranging from religious significance to what our translators can only render as seemed like a good idea at the time. But here's the concerning part. Many humans acquire multiple marks throughout their lives." "Multiple?" "The human you're currently observing has at least 4 visible modifications, and thermal scans suggest several more beneath her clothing. Her crew members show similar patterns." Zefkari watched as Ink gestured to something off-screen, her movements revealing a complex geometric design wrapped around her forearm, and what appeared to be text in an alien script along her collarbone. "Text?" he asked. "We're working on translation. Preliminary analysis suggests it's either a battle motto or—" Vashti paused. "A quotation from what humans call literature." The crystalline hive observer aboard Zefkari's ship, who had remained silent throughout the exchange, suddenly began resonating at frequencies that indicated extreme agitation. "Commander, permission to share cultural analysis from my collective?" "Granted." "Our species recognizes pain as a teaching mechanism. The fact that humans voluntarily subject themselves to pain for purely decorative or commemorative purposes suggests either a complete disconnect from normal survival instincts or an ability to process physical discomfort that far exceeds standard biological parameters." "Meaning?" "Meaning these aren't just marks, Commander. They're proof of concept. Each human who has undergone this process has demonstrated their willingness to accept pain for reasons that may not be immediately apparent to outside observers." On the screen, Ink had arrived at another maintenance station and was now explaining something to her crew members while pointing at various pieces of equipment. Her gestures were economical, confident, and entirely unconscious of the fact that she was being observed by representatives of multiple galactic civilizations. "There's more," announced Vexhui. "Intelligence has been analyzing human cultural databases, and they've discovered that many of their stories, their fictional entertainment media, feature individuals with significant body modifications as heroes, rebels, or—" She struggled with the translation. "Persons who have chosen to live outside conventional social structures." "Criminals?" "Not exactly. More like individuals who have rejected the constraints of their society in favor of personal freedom. The marking patterns appear to correlate with a cultural archetype they call outlaws, or free spirits." Zefkari considered this information while watching Ink efficiently diagnose whatever was wrong with the atmospheric processor in front of her. She moved with the kind of casual competence that came from years of experience, completely unfazed by the complexity of the alien technology she was repairing. "Commander," came another transmission from intelligence. "We've made contact with the Void Dancers. They want to share their analysis of human modification practices. The Void Dancers were an ancient species that communicated entirely through quantum entanglement and had never been wrong about xenocultural assessments. When they volunteered information, wise commanders listened. The entities called humans practice voluntary scarification as a form of identity consolidation," came the transmission, translated through 17 different linguistic matrices. Each mark represents a decision point in their individual development. They are, in effect, walking repositories of their own personal histories. "And that means?" "It means, Commander, that when a human shows you their marks, they are not displaying decoration. They are sharing their journey. The female has shown you her point of origin. This suggests either supreme confidence in her abilities or supreme confidence in what her point of origin represents." Zefkari looked once more at the small blue-green sphere on Ink's arm as she bent over another piece of machinery, her movements precise and unhurried. "Earth. Third rock from Sol. Population 8 billion, give or take." The more he learned about it, the less he wanted to find out what those 8 billion had taught her. The arrival of the Dominion's judgment and its escort flotilla should have simplified matters. Instead, Fleet Admiral Koroneth found himself reviewing situation reports that read like the fever dreams of a xenopsychologist having a breakdown. "Let me understand this correctly," Koroneth said to his assembled staff, his 6 eyes focusing on different displays simultaneously. "We have a single mining station defended by 17 humans, and our initial contact team is requesting cultural anthropologists." "Not requesting, sir," replied Intelligence Coordinator Vashti. demanding, with extreme prejudice. Through the main viewer, Corneth could observe the mining station continuing its operations with what appeared to be deliberate indifference to the presence of 47 warships in its immediate vicinity. Thermal scans showed the human crew going about their daily routines, maintenance, cargo processing, and what appeared to be a communal meal preparation. "They're cooking," observed Tactical Officer Grentok. "I can see that. While we're here, with enough firepower to glass their entire facility. I can see that too." What Corneth couldn't understand was why this felt less like observing a primitive outpost and more like watching a group of apex predators pretend they hadn't noticed the pack of scavengers circling their territory. "Sir," came a transmission from Commander Zefkari aboard the Razor. "The human-designated Ink has been joined by her crew. You need to see this." The display shifted to show the interior of the mining station's main corridor. 5 humans moved through the space, with the kind of easy coordination that spoke of years working together. Each bore multiple modifications, geometric patterns, symbolic representations, and text in various languages scattered across visible skin like a catalog of experiences. But it was their behavior that made Corneth's auxiliary hearts skip a beat. They were laughing. Sound analysis indicates elevated mood patterns consistent with amusement, reported communications specialist Threll. They appear to be telling stories about previous encounters with what they term corporate raiders. Corporate raiders? Apparently their designation for hostile takeover attempts. Intelligence suggests it's a common occurrence in human space. Corneth watched as one of the humans, a male with what appeared to be mechanical gears embedded in a spiral pattern up his left arm, gestured expansively while recounting something that made his companions laugh harder. Whatever he was describing involved considerable physical mimicry and sound effects. "Are they mocking us?" asked Grentok. "Unknown. The gesture patterns don't match any known hostile intentions. If anything, they appear to be—" Threll paused, consulting his translation matrix, bonding through shared experience. "They're not even armed," observed Fleet Sensor Operator Quixomer, whose crystalline body resonated with confusion. "Scans show standard industrial equipment, maintenance tools, and what appears to be recreational substances." Recreational substances? Fermented plant matter, distilled ethanol, and something called coffee that registers as mildly psychoactive. On screen, the human-designated Marcus, according to intelligence files, a maintenance specialist with 15 cycles of deep space experience, had rolled up his sleeves to reveal a complex pattern of interconnected symbols running from wrist to shoulder. As he gestured, the design seemed to tell a story of its own. "Coordinator Vashati," Corneth said carefully, "what have we learned about human scarification in relation to combat experience?" "That's complicated, sir. Cross-referencing their cultural databases suggests that while some modifications commemorate military service or conflict survival, others appear to document personal achievements like graduating from educational institutions or surviving particularly difficult family gatherings." Surviving family gatherings. Human social structures are apparently more complex than previously estimated. Through the comm system came the sound of the humans' conversation, translated in real time by the fleet's linguistic processors. What emerged was a casual discussion of technical specifications, work schedules, and something called weekend plans that seemed to involve recreational activities. Nothing about conquest, territorial defense, or impending doom. Nothing about the 47 warships currently surrounding their facility. "Sir," came an urgent transmission from the Void, Dancer's observer ship. "Our analysis suggests the humans are employing psychological warfare tactics of unprecedented sophistication." Explain. By demonstrating complete unconcern for your presence, they are forcing you to question either their competence or their confidence. Since their technical capabilities are clearly adequate, they're maintaining a complex orbital facility. The implication is that their confidence stems from factors you have not yet identified. Koroneth felt a chill run through his exoskeleton. What factors? Unknown. But consider. Each visible modification on their bodies represents a decision to endure pain for symbolic purposes. They have, in effect, advertised their willingness to accept discomfort in service of personal meaning. On the display, Ink had returned to view, now accompanied by a female crew member whose modifications included what appeared to be a detailed stellar cartography map wrapped around her torso and a series of mathematical equations running down her spine. "That's Navigator Chen," reported intelligence. "The stellar map shows her home system, 3 systems she's worked in, and 2 systems that don't appear in our databases." Unknown systems? Very unknown. The coordinates suggest regions of space we haven't mapped, regions we assumed were uninhabitable. Koroneth studied the human navigator, who was currently sharing what appeared to be a technical joke with her companions, while casually displaying proof that her species had explored territory the Dominion considered inaccessible. "Fleet Admiral," came a priority transmission from Dominion Command. "Be advised we're receiving reports from other sectors. Human encounters are being reported across 17 different systems." Encounters? Not conflicts. Encounters. Humans appear to be everywhere. Mining operations, trading posts, survey missions, research stations. Always small groups. Always appearing completely harmless. Always marked with these modifications. How many? Current estimates suggest several thousand small operations across explored space, possibly more in regions we haven't catalogued. Koroneth processed this information while watching Ink examine what appeared to be a routine maintenance checklist. Thousands of small human operations, all staffed by individuals who voluntarily scarred themselves with personal histories, and then went about their business as if 47 warships were no more concerning than weather patterns. "Sir," whispered Tactical Officer Grentok, "request permission to withdraw to a safer distance while we reassess the situation." Safer distance? These humans, they're not responding to intimidation because they don't recognize it as intimidation. And if they don't recognize our threat postures, Grentok's voice trailed off. What? Then they might have threat postures we don't recognize either. On screen, Ink glanced toward the communication panel with mild interest, as if suddenly remembering she had visitors. She approached the console with the same casual confidence she'd displayed throughout the encounter, her Earth tattoo clearly visible as she reached for the transmission controls. "Hey there, Fleet Admiral," she said, apparently having overheard their conversations. "Hope you don't mind us eavesdropping. Your comm systems are pretty loud, and we've got sensitive equipment here." Koroneth felt something resembling panic flutter through his nervous system. "You've been monitoring our communications?" "Well, yeah. It's our space, our station, our comm arrays. Plus, you guys have been having a really interesting conversation about us. Had to listen in." She grinned, an expression that Koroneth's cultural databases filed under predatory amusement. "So, Admiral, what's the verdict? Are we the terrifying warrior cult you were expecting, or just disappointing?" The question hung in the recycled air of the command bridge like a challenge disguised as small talk. And that, Koroneth realized, might be the most terrifying thing of all. Ink leaned against the communication console with the relaxed posture of someone who had just realized she held all the cards in a game everyone else was still trying to understand. The silence from the Dominion fleet stretched long enough for her to finish the last of her coffee and consider whether she needed a refill. "You know what, Admiral? she said finally, setting down her empty mug with deliberate ceremony. I think we got off on the wrong foot here. Let me start over. She straightened, and something in her posture shifted. Not threatening, exactly, but focused in a way that made every sensor array in the Dominion fleet suddenly seem inadequate. My name is Rebecca Torres. I was born in a place called Phoenix, on a continent called North America, on the third planet of the Sol system. I left home when I was 17 because my father drank too much, and my mother worked 3 jobs just to keep food on the table. I've been working deep space installations for 22 years, and in that time, I've seen things that would give your species nightmares. She paused, rolling her sleeve higher to reveal more of the intricate marking around her forearm. This isn't just Earth, she continued, tracing the design with one finger. This is Earth as seen from Luna City, where I spent 3 years learning how to keep atmospheric processors running in environments that wanted to kill me every second of every day. The little crater pattern here? That's Mare Tranquillitatis, where humans first learned to walk on worlds that weren't their own. Fleet Admiral Coroneth found his 6 eyes tracking every movement, every gesture, as if his life depended on understanding what he was witnessing. And this, Ink said, indicating the geometric pattern wrapping around her forearm, represents the Fibonacci sequence as expressed in the growth pattern of a sunflower. You know why I got that one, Admiral? Coroneth's throat had gone completely dry. No. Because it reminded me that the same mathematical principles that govern the spiral of galaxies also determine how a simple flower arranges its seeds. It's all connected, you see. Everything. From the smallest living thing to the largest structures in space. And once you understand that... She smiled, and this time there was nothing predatory about it at all. Well, once you understand that, 47 warships doesn't seem like such a big deal. The implications of her words rippled through the Dominion command structure like shockwaves. Here was someone who wore mathematical constants under her skin and spoke of cosmic interconnection while repairing mining equipment. You're philosophers, whispered Coordinator Vashati over the comm channel. We're practical, Ink corrected. Philosophy is what happens when you have time to think. Out here you think while you work, or you don't survive long enough for either. She gestured to her crew, who had gathered around the communication station with expressions of mild curiosity. Marcus over there has the orbital mechanics of 3 different star systems mapped across his back, because he wanted to remember the first time he successfully plotted a 0G cargo transfer. Chen's got quantum field equations running down her spine because she figured out how to recalibrate a sensor array using nothing but spare parts and stubbornness. And you? Asked Coroneth, though he wasn't sure he wanted to know the answer. Ink's expression grew thoughtful. Admiral, every human who leaves Earth carries something with them. Some carry pictures, some carry music, some carry memories. She touched the small blue-green sphere on her arm. I carry this because Earth taught me the most important lesson anyone can learn. Which is, that home isn't a place you return to. It's something you carry with you, wherever you go. And if you carry it right, if you really understand what it gave you, then you're never really lost, and you're never really alone. The profundity of the statement hung in space between the mining station and the assembled fleet like a bridge nobody had expected to find. But here's the thing, Admiral, Ink continued, her voice taking on a conversational tone that somehow made her next words even more unsettling. You came here expecting to find primitives, people you could intimidate or conquer or negotiate with from a position of strength. Instead, you found people who voluntarily scar themselves with reminders of where they came from and what they've learned. She leaned closer to the communication pickup, her expression shifting to something that might have been sympathy. Do you know what that means? Coroneth shook his head, no longer trusting his voice. It means we've already conquered the only thing that matters. We've conquered fear. Fear of pain, fear of loss, fear of being forgotten. Every mark on every human in this sector is proof that we're willing to carry our experiences with us, permanently, because we've decided those experiences are worth remembering. The weight of her words settled over the Dominion fleet, like a blanket of implications none of them were equipped to handle. So here's my counteroffer, Admiral. You can stay here and try to figure out how to intimidate people who tattoo mathematical constants on their bodies for fun. Or, she shrugged, you can go find someone else to conquer, someone who still has something left to lose. The communication channel went silent, except for the gentle hum of the mining station's life support systems. 47 warships hung in space around a facility operated by 17 humans who had just redefined the concept of psychological warfare by refusing to acknowledge it existed. Fleet Admiral, came a whispered transmission from Commander Zeph Kari. Request permission to withdraw and reassess. Coroneth studied the human female on his screen, this Rebecca Torres who called herself Ink, and wore her homeworld like a badge of honor earned through distance and time. She had returned to her routine maintenance checks, apparently satisfied that she had made her point. Granted, he said finally. All ships, prepare for departure. Sir? Asked Tactical Officer Grentak. You heard me. We're leaving. But the conquest has already happened, Coroneth replied, watching as Ink bent over another piece of equipment with the same casual competence she had displayed throughout their encounter. We just weren't the ones doing the conquering. As the Dominion fleet prepared to jump to hyperspace, Coroneth found himself taking one last look at the mining station and its crew of scarred humans who had won a battle without fighting it. The final report would list the encounter as inconclusive due to insufficient intelligence regarding human defensive capabilities. But Coroneth knew the truth was simpler and far more disturbing. They had come looking for a world to conquer, and instead found people who had already conquered themselves. And in the end, Ink had been right about Earth. It was enough. More than enough. It was everything. Later, when the mining station had returned to its quiet routine, and the last of the Dominion ships had disappeared into hyperspace, Ink finished her maintenance rounds and returned to the crew quarters she shared with Marcus. He looked up from his reading tablet as she entered. So, he said, how'd it go with the Space Navy? Ink considered the question while pulling off her work shirt, revealing the full extent of her body modifications for the first time. Along with the Earth tattoo and the Fibonacci spiral, there were star charts, chemical formulas, snippets of poetry in 6 different languages, and, running in small script along her collarbone, the coordinates for a small mining station in the Kepler 442 system, right where they were now. Pretty well, she said, finally. I think they learned something today. About humans? Ink smiled, fingering the small blue-green sphere that had started the whole confrontation. About the difference between showing someone your scars and showing them your story. Marcus looked confused. What's the difference? Scars are what the universe does to you, Ink replied, settling in next to him. Stories are what you do with what the universe gives you. She glanced at the small porthole showing the stars beyond, where somewhere in the distance, 47 warships were probably still trying to figure out what had just happened to them. And our story, she added, is that we're still here,